working on meeting strategy 3. Yeah, just working on meeting. I mean, I could.
So you can refuse yourself. That's not, yeah, refuse.
Yeah, but anyways, that's a signal. And we are. Yeah. But
Tell her you can't talk to her.
but I can stop.
You can. You've already refused.
That was my.
Yeah, no, yeah, you're right. You think that?
We're recording, so whenever we
Okay.
gotta do this.
Yeah.
Are you a staff person?
Yes.
Yeah.
Picture.
Mark.
What picture? Like a hole over step
Right.
through there. She looks pretty neat. Yeah. Two.
All right, I'd like to call this meeting of the East Franklinton Review Board to order. See, I guess first thing I need to do, Mark, is I need to swear you in. As a staff member today. Mark, do you swear or affirm that any testimony you're about to give is true and accurate to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I did.
Call the roll, please.
Yes. Dr. Fox.
Here.
Mr. Ferguson.
Here.
Overly. Szymanski. Present. Manfres. Mr. White. Here. Present.
Thank you. Okay, I have an announcement here, apparently. City of Columbus COVID-19 Safe Work Practice Guidance version 17. Effective Monday, August 16, all City of Columbus employees and visitors to city buildings are required to wear a face covering regardless of vaccination standards. It's also recommended any person attending the meeting maintain 6 feet social distance. Masks, disinfecting wipes, hand sanitizer are all available near the entrance. Any person experiencing symptoms of COVID-19 should not enter the building. This is a public forum, and those who wish to address us are invited to do so. There's a 3-minute time limit on any members of the public asking to address the review board. So with that, has everybody had an opportunity to review the minutes from the last meeting held on August 25th? So approved. Excuse me?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that the minutes be approved. Call roll, please.
Dr. Fox. Mr. Ferguson.
Abstain.
Mr. Szymanski.
Approve.
Mr. White. Approved. Motion carries.
Okay, let's move on. New applications. We have 19001. The address is 254 South Skidmore Street, and the applicant is Drew A. Norris, and we are reviewing construction of a new 2-car garage. Staff report, please.
Postal description: 254 South Skidmore Street is the site of a single-family home in the Dodge Park subdistrict. The applicant is seeking approval for the construction of a new 2-car garage at the rear of the property. The garage is 20 foot wide, but set back approximately 6 feet from the alley, 35 feet from the house, and 5 feet on either side of the yard. The proposed materials include vinyl siding in gray, asphalt shingles in black, and a 16-foot wide overhead aluminum garage door. A new 18-foot wide by 6-foot deep concrete driveway is also being proposed off the alley. No exterior lighting is being proposed at this time. Submittal includes existing conditions, measured site plan, garage plan specifications, and materials. The proposal is consistent with the recommendations of the East Franklinton Creative Community District Plan. The plan recommends that accessory buildings, including attached garages, should be located to the rear of the principal building along with any surface parking and be integrated with the existing fabric and scale of development in the surrounding neighborhood. The proposed garage is of appropriate size and location and is of similar materiality to other detached garages on nearby properties. Staff recommends approval.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for staff? None? Go ahead.
So could you pull up there's a plan of the garage on an area. Right that. I know this is just a rough drawing. But it looks like the garage is sitting more forward than the other garages, and I just want to clarify that that's just the drawing error, that the garage is set in the line of all the other garages. Or not.
6 feet.
I mean, this is what was submitted to us.
We can ask the applicant for us.
Okay. Are you the applicant, sir?
Yes, sir.
Could you come forward, please?
Yeah.
And have a seat, and please state your name for the record.
It's Drew Norris.
Mr. Norris, you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is true and accurate to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Suppose the most appropriate thing at this point is, Kim, go ahead and ask your question.
You heard my question.
Yeah, I heard it.
I didn't know if the 6 feet was the same as the other garages, or is the 6 feet is a new dimension that you're creating, or?
The 6 feet's the concrete approach. So that 6 feet is the concrete approach.
So does the back of the garage align with the other garages on the outfit?
The back or the front? So,
Oh,
I mean, because
yeah, it's the front of the garage.
Okay, yeah, because I wasn't sure, because I don't know the dimensions of the other ones, but the front will be in line with the others. Yes, sir.
Okay, that was my one concern, that it was going to look out of place because it wasn't.
No, it's going to be in line with the others. That's what the approach is for.
Okay.
Do you have anything to add? You're welcome to add what you wish.
No, I don't really have anything else to add.
Okay. Any other question for the applicant? If not, entertain a motion at this time.
I have another question. So in terms of the materials of the garage, you're using siding,
Yes, sir.
and what is the material of the house?
The vinyl siding.
So is it the same siding?
It's going to be a very similar siding.
The
Yes.
same color?
It's the same color, yes.
Thank you.
And the shingles are,
Right.
yep, they're going to be the same too. We match the shingles. They're the same black textural shingles.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Not an entertain a motion at this time.
Do what you do.
Motion to approve.
Okay,
I'll second.
been moved and seconded to approve the application as submitted. Call roll, please.
Box.
Approved.
Mr. Ferguson.
Approved.
Mr. Szymanski.
Approved.
Mr. Webb. Approved. Yes.
Thank you very much. Good luck. Okay, moving on to conceptual applications. Again, we have one. Application EF 2109-002, address 240 McDowell Street. And the owner is the Columbus Metropolitan Housing Authority, applicant Griffin and Caldwell, and it's River and Rich Phase 2. Staff report, please.
The applicant is requesting conceptual review of the River and Ridge 2 mixed-use development located within the Arts and Innovation Subdistrict. Project would redevelop about 5 acres of currently vacant lots bounded by West Rich Street to the north, McDowell Street to the east, the Dodge Park Recreation Center to the south, and May Avenue to the west. The current conceptual development plan includes the following: a 4-story residential building on the southern portion of the site with a mix of studio, 1-bedroom, and 2-bedroom units with partially covered surface parking lot along the Dodge Park frontage. A 5-story mixed-use building on the northern portion of the site with a 1-level parking garage and an amenity deck above. Included in this building is ground floor retail and commercial fronting Rich Street and wrapping the corner of McDowell Street, with a mix of 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom units above on floors 2 through 5. The proposal includes affordable housing units, central landscape, east-west pedestrian views, including the main entry to the southern building, access to the amenity deck at the northern building, and an elevated pedestrian walkway. The building will include ample bicycle parking on site and a design for a scooter corral drop-off area for residents and the public is being identified. Primary changes to this application from the last review in June 2021 include wrapping the commercial frontage of the north building around the corner onto McDowell Street and pushing the parking garage access south, added walk-up stoop residential units to the southern building along McDowell Street, added gates to the pedestrian views, and created a gated private drive running south along May Avenue and the south frontage of the site. The application previously came before the board in June 2021 and September 2019. At the June meeting, the board encouraged the applicant to consider a redesign that would treat the park as an amenity, further activate McDowell Street with ground floor uses, and better hide the garage facade, as well as consider how the openness of the courtyard would be affected if that area had to be secured. The board agreed that the proposed architecture for both buildings worked well. Additionally, the board had questions on the programming of the site and whether or not it made sense for the southern building to be larger, i.e. 6 to 8 stories, to anchor the 3-block development. Total counts are as follows: 7,500 square feet of retail and commercial space, 234 residential units, and 224 parking spaces. Submittal includes a conceptual site plan, floor plans, site plan, and renderings. The proposal is generally consistent with recommendations of the East Franklinton Creative Community District Plan. Plan recommends contemporary building design with vertical elements and that buildings front the street with parking being lined with first floor uses. The plan also recommends that public and private spaces be demarcated through the use of landscaping, walls, fences, gates, and other methods to denote boundaries and/or buffers. The applicant has responded to the recommendations of the board and staff to extend retail use along McDowell Street through the addition of sidewalk dining. Additionally, the applicant has responded to concerns about parking fronting on McDowell by creating a more pedestrian-oriented space, including trees on both sides of the sidewalk and public art. While access to the garage is still provided on McDowell, staff believe the current design appropriately activates the street as recommended by the plan. Staff continue to recommend the following design modifications: orienting the south building to face Dodge Park, landscaping such as trees, shrubs, and/or fencing along the southern frontage to delineate the Dodge Park parking lot from the development, removing the elevated walkway between the north and south building to encourage more street activity. Additionally, staff recommends removal of the proposed gates for the private drive and parking at the perimeter of the southern building, and removal of the fence and gate at the pedestrian views based on the plan recommendation for public spaces like plazas or courtyards. As this is being heard for conceptual review, staff do not have a recommendation at this time.
Thank you. Questions for staff? If not, would the applicant like to step forward, please?
Good afternoon,
State your names for the record, please.
Brent Sobczak, Gaston Communities. Address.
And,
Brian Bernstein with Realm Collaborative.
okay, gentlemen, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is true and accurate to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes.
Yes.
You may proceed. The floor is yours.
We just wanted to come back, and really, we heard you guys on the McDowell Street at the last meeting, and we've brought Realm onto the team, and we've really worked on it the last 30, 45 days, and wanted to make sure we are on the right path with McDowell and what we were trying to create there. So that was really the big picture that we wanted to talk about today. I'd like Brian to kind of walk you through what we're trying to accomplish there.
Sure. The series of slides we have to help articulate some of the differences between the last time that we were in front of the board here. And so the first is a bit of an illustrative. On the left was the prior plan. On the right is the proposed plan today, or conceptual plan. The next slide articulates some of the changes between the two plans. So the first being that the garage entry, which was further to the north originally, has now moved further south on McDowell to allow for the patio of a proposed, retail restaurant to turn the corner on McDowell there at number 2. And then we've also addressed some of the patios on the southern building facing McDowell to give those a bit of a front stoop element, a little more activation on McDowell. And then finally, tried to address McDowell as a bit stronger of a place. We termed it a bit of a promenade, but try to give it some more intentionality in terms of its connection down to Dodge Park. These next 2 plans just illustrate the uses of the ground floor, so you can see where the commercial faces Rich Street and the residential that is above. If you go back to the last plan just real quick, that on the ground floor of the second building on the south, that is all lined with residential facing the public right away, and then the view in the middle. And then if you go to the second page there, this is the second level where you can see residential on floors 2 through 4 above that. And then the intention to have some sort of activated amenity pool area above the garage in the north building. This diagram illustrates the areas that are perceived to be largely public in nature, allowing vehicles or anybody driving by the site. And then the darker red area there indicating areas that would fall within sort of a private area, either gated and or fenced. These next slides, we'll talk a little bit about McDowell and some of the changes to that. Again, I think we took the approach that McDowell could be given some more intention in terms of the purpose that it serves within the neighborhood, connecting all the way from the north at Gravity and Broad Street all the way down to Dodge Park. And so the next slide starts to indicate sort of the difference between areas of what are the proposed tree lawn from the curb there to the sidewalk hardscape zone, and then to the area that would be within the on the other side of the right of way to the face of the building. The next slide just starts to give some indication where you can see from the right hand side of the page looking to the left, that would be the corner of Rich and McDowell, where you can see a patio space that extends to just behind the sidewalk. Behind that is an area that would be the face of the parking garage that we identified as an opportunity both to have public art there, as well as some site furnishings and an opportunity just to create more of a public space against the building and along the promenade. And then to the far end, the left-hand side there would be where the residential units address McDowell's place. I think one thing to point out, no, you can go, that's great, thank you. One thing to point out, the thought here is that we would try to use trees on both sides of the sidewalk to help kind of reinforce a bit of an architectural character with those trees, really giving greater identity to McDowell as something different than other sidewalks in the neighborhood. Another thing that we're hoping to do, I apologize, I'm sure this slide got updated, but in our proposal is that the sidewalk would be 6 feet wide, 8 feet wide, giving it greater width than normal sidewalks in the area. I believe the sidewalk on the other side of McDowell is a 6-foot sidewalk. So the additional 2 feet, I think, will help give it a little bit greater relatively that this is something special versus other sidewalks in the neighborhood. And then the image on the left is a precedent of how the stoops might address the street. So if you go to the next series of views, we'll walk down from the north end of McDowell. You can see the indication of the patio space, which would be a restaurant retail, to the area in front of the garage, which would have some sort of public space and or art that I think we're hoping to continue to evolve and bring together a more specific design to that. You can see the double row of trees that are on the left and the right of the sidewalk. And then the next slide gets to the midpoint between the north and the south building. Here's where we would have a little bit of a moment between the two buildings, sort of a pausing moment on McDowell, but the hardscape sort of accentuating that break. This would be the lobby for that second building. So in some ways, adding a little bit of activation to the street, given the in and out of the door there. And then the last slide, looking at how the residential stoops address the street. And apologize, these are not the current slides, but there's enough indication there where you can see that the sidewalk is intended to be a wider sidewalk than what is proposed. I think that's the last slide.
Okay. Well, given that this is a conceptual review, I will open this up to the board members for questions, comments, thoughts. Gentlemen, lady?
I was not at the last meeting, but I'm curious about the step down. I like the general concept of this. I remember the first conceptual review, and I think you really addressed, making a more cohesive piece out of all of this. And I actually am pretty good with the McDowell Street experience. I think you've covered up enough of the structured parking that I could imagine that there could be a kind of funky element of that restaurant piece turning the corner. But my question really relates to the south building, and I think it was brought up in the staff comments, the relationship of it to Dodge Park and frankly, the view to the river. It seems like by stepping it down and also not, I don't know, like it could have been a donut of residential with a buried courtyard of parking. And it could, you could actually have units that would address the river. And so I'm just curious about what's in that decision of kind of focusing it more to the north and.
Yeah, I guess we went around a lot on that and had different iterations and shapes with these buildings. I think there were a couple factors that kind of led to how we got here. Number one, that view looking south isn't great.
It's the highway.
It's the 70-71 interchange.
Yeah.
And the way the freeway comes in and the pinch point, you're kind of on top of it.
Mhm.
Then what's going on with Dodge Park? I mean, it's really, that section is not really a park, it's a surface lot. And then there's a couple basketball courts as you head
Right.
west, then the facility. So from a view standpoint, it wasn't great. And then we started looking at, okay, we've got 3-story just to the east of McDowell, got the 5-story on Ridge already. Then we really got into, can we create a unique amenity space that is kind of different, which we haven't really elaborated on to this point, but what we're planning to do within that view and on the second level of the podium is really trying to emphasize all the units facing within that space and trying to get the most unit count on that space. Then the last piece was parking. And the more units we added, the more, right now that garage west of McDowell, east of McDowell, is not getting utilized. So we're comfortable with this kind of parking ratio. But I think once we get a little further on unit counts, that gets a little questionable.
Mhm.
And then the city, in the short term, do not have plans to kind of reinstate the grid with May and Sullivan. Not to say that won't happen in the future. So kind of the way we've laid it out is private in that one. So I think all of those factors played into how we got there. But I think the ultimate goal was trying to have all of these units fronting, having a viewpoint or as many as possible onto this courtyard. So.
Yeah, I mean, I get that for sure. I get the relationship with the park as it is right now, but of course that could all change. Like I think Dodge Park could be reconfigured in a way that could, be a nicer adjacent amenity for a project of this scale. And so that's, like I'm even thinking about the parking, like it's just a single surface lot
in that court, right?
Mhm.
But I can see you've got streets on either side. You could dip, you could do a parking structure where you dip one down on May Street and dip one up on McDowell Street, and suddenly you've doubled up the parking, and that's really, it's the corridor side of your development anyway, so it's not like there's
Yeah.
lots of view at all from the units into that space. So it could be a way of increasing the parking for you and therefore making an argument to increase the unit count. That's my biggest thing. I think, like I said, I love the street experience of this. I just think there's a real opportunity here to address the park and, even the view, like, yeah, I'm looking at a highway, but I might want to really look at, like, that's kind of an interesting little interchange of elements that could be kind of fun to have as part of your experience of this development. What are my thoughts?
So I'm going to kind of build somewhat on that discussion, but maybe in a different direction.
Yeah.
I think, so let's start with just the overall site planning part of it. I think putting that surface parking in that courtyard is a real tragedy. And so all those people that are around that will have down parking. You've got the future site, and I don't know what the relationship, but you've shown a parking garage on that before in earlier submissions. I don't know why that couldn't be parking in the short term to service this building. That's one comment. And then the whole orientation, if you took the U and made it into a C and faced the courtyard to the west, sorry. That would all of a sudden put units that are facing towards the river. And I take your comment about what do you look at, but I'm thinking just from an urban design standpoint, you still get the light buildings along the alley, and you wrap McDowell and you wrap then the river frontage. It just seems like it's a better diagram. And then that U then could plug into a mirror U on the other side. And so you're internalizing whatever. And I'm still not advocating for surface parking in the middle of that courtyard. I think there's another solution that could be thought of that involves the other parcel long-term or short-term and long-term. So that's just, those are kind of the bigger kind of site planning things. I think the McDowell Street, you guys have heard me say McDowell Street's an important street. It's the connector, Brian. You highlighted that in your presentation. I think what you started to do with that is really good and really strong. I had a question though about why the patio and not something that's enclosed on corner?
From, really from the users that we have today and the users that we've tried to attract in phase one, the lack of patio space has been kind of number one priority for the people that are there or the people looking. There's just not enough. So this was.
But could it be, an enclosed patio space so that in the winter when it's really cold, instead of relying on heat lamps to kind of get you to some point, that it can be enclosed? And I mean, I'm not saying how the whole thing should function, but if it would look like it's an enclosed space, but it's more of a patio, you see that?
Three-season.
Well,
Three-season
they're all
patio.
over Rich Park and Dublin, right?
Yeah.
They open them up, and it seems like that would give you more of an architectural. And I get the vibe, in the summer, open it up and it's, everybody sitting out there, it'd be great. I just think, again, we wanted architecture to wrap around that corner, and I think you guys are getting there with that, but I just think I'm thinking about year round and what does it look like, January 31st? Is it just, the chairs are all stacked up and pushed up against the building, nobody's there? And if it was an enclosed space that you could keep heated, that, people would be there all year round. I was also thinking that, if that idea is too much square footage for patio, although you just said there's not enough, could you kind of start to let the outdoor patio slide down the street? And not that I don't like what you did with the garage and the art and I think that's all great. But you could even extend it even further perhaps as an outdoor. I mean, you've got it as an outdoor space, right? And you shut the chairs in and stuff, so it just, how much can you slide patio, outdoor exterior patio to the south? Again, activate that and have more enclosed patio. So those are just some thoughts. I do like this. The other question I had was about public versus private, and the pink area on whatever drawing that is, that says public, but it's private property. So the intention is that on your private property, you want to encourage public access. Is that correct?
Sorry, no, we're looking at, can you, point to where that's, where you're referring to, Ken?
It's a drawing. The pink area, right, is, you said it's public, right?
The light pink area, yes.
Right, but if you go back to the diagram that shows what is owned by Casto and what isn't, that looks like it's all
I
private.
guess to be, clear, it's publicly accessible, so against
Right.
everything against McDowell, that area, basically forward. I think in the McDowell one, we were just indicating sort of what was privately owned versus publicly owned.
It's the graphic activist one. That's the one that shows. Oh, but one more. No, they're not, that one.
Yeah.
So the blue is Castro property, right? And some
Behind
you're
it.
showing is pink is.
Right,
Yeah, so.
yes.
So does that get formalized in terms of public accessibility?
Well, I don't know what form, the similar condition we have on phase one on McDowell and Rich is what we are anticipating will be done in terms of the public scope of work. McDowell and Rich. How that's formalized, I can't remember what documentation is in place.
Yeah.
I think it's just the right of way.
What's
People
that?
can walk there. It's not like the promenade is gated, so it's private access. But like, people can walk on their they're not like stopping the public from going on that area.
Right. I know in other developments, there's development agreements that designates areas like pocket plazas or pocket parks. And while those are on private property, there are designated accessible space for the public, and you can't like kick them out if you wanted to. So it's that type of, I guess, agreement that I'm thinking of. So I love that whole idea. I mean, it's of having space that is accessible to the public, putting furniture and other amenities there that people that are walking along the dock can just stop and feel like they're welcome there, not to feel like, oh, can I sit in that seat because I don't know if that's public. I guess I'd like the Brian, the 8-foot walk, are you stealing that from the 15 feet?
It's that we had submitted an updated series of exhibits that corrected these. There's basically 14 feet from the back of the curb to the right-of-way line. And what we're proposing is an 8-foot sidewalk and a 6-foot tree line.
So you're increasing it by over 4 feet overall. I don't know where the property line, the right-of-way line is, but you've got 10
Well,
feet,
the
right?
right-of-way line is at 14 feet off of that.
Okay, well, that wasn't reflected in this drawing, right? This drawing's inaccurate. It shows 10.
This is, we submitted new drawings.
Right,
This
no, I
is-
get that, but, so, yeah, again, 8 feet's great, I have no problem with that. How confident are you that that second row of trees is gonna work? I mean, if you look at the renderings,
Yeah.
it's like they're growing up into the balconies, right?
Right. I think that, obviously the type of tree species that we select, I think will, one, be part of that. Two, we're hoping to do an alternating offset of trees so that we're sort of, offsetting their canopies. And, if you happen to walk around town, there's a number of instances. I was just noticing the Discovery District where they have locust trees that are pretty close to the face of the building, and whether they've been purposely trimmed over the years and maintained, they are within that same distance, similar distance. That I think that it's feasible and can be done.
So, I assume you're gonna use something columnar, right? And if so
Right.
you're working that out.
Right. Yeah.
I know that. I mean, I love
No, it's a great
the look, the idea, and I know you guys will figure it out. But you don't want the trees growing up in the balconies because that's obviously gonna be a problem. So so I guess I'm like the part that I think, you know, I think you guys are on the McDowell Street kind of streetscape. I still think there's more thought about that space as it wraps and how it becomes more, you know, all year round use. And again, the parking in the middle of the building, just, I know, I just look at it and go, wow, would I want to like come out of my balcony and stare at it? Parking and.
But it's a single loaded corridor, so there really is.
And on top there's.
Oh,
So that's a, I guess,
ground floor.
I guess
Yeah,
that's-
no, well,
we wouldn't be doing our job if we didn't agree, because I actually think this orientation is, I mean, without saying, hey, I wouldn't love surface parking, I mean, there's that question there, but from an orientation, all those, that dashed line is all units up above that, should the park get redone, you have more units there that have view of the park than if you just line one straight line, because now everyone in that courtyard is out looking over the park. So from a future proofing, if that does, I like this orientation better. Would I love to see it as a podium and that's a landscape deck here, but
Yeah.
I'm not gonna sit here and say that the only way that we would approve it or that I would approve it is if that was a courtyard deck. I understand the economics.
It's not a courtyard deck, it'd be a grade, because that's grade parking, right? A grade parking.
I understand,
Just make that
to
difference.
add, that is there. I'm
You're saying do a podium.
They're just saying, yeah, it's
Landscape.
buried underground or go up above, like, that's an economic thing that I understand why they're not doing that. And
So you're not advocating for a podium.
no, I'm not. I mean, in a perfect world, yes, I would say the best from a aesthetically pleasing would be, yeah, look at over a podium that has a courtyard that's landscaped and you have these views. But I like the C shape that way because I think from a future perspective, they may be looking down on parking, but they also are looking at the river, and that way, if the park gets redone,
Or
those
the
views.
71 split.
But I mean, there are things that can be done before that 71 split that would give you a better view out that way. So, so I'm more supportive of this than if you flip it the other way, you're always gonna be looking at probably another building and losing views. So
Flip it, like.
I think
flip it,
as far as
turn
you
the
had
seat.
suggested, flipping the opening looking west, and I wouldn't think that that would be.
So,
Yeah, I see what, I mean, I'm with you. I'd love, the amenity deck would be fantastic. And I would even advocate for, I don't know why that, I think that building steps down just because of the unit count that you know, you got the balanced parking. But I like them both as like the same massing and then if you could bump up the amount of parking over up with a podium over it, and then you have an amenity park. I know it is a question of economics of the project.
I mean, Ryan brings up it's an economic driving force as we're trying to add affordability component to
Yeah.
it and trying to balance creating a unique amenity that on top of that podium is going to be very expensive. So how can we
Trying to get.
not doing
more
a second
people to
podium?
pay for it.
In Bart, or Tim, one of the, I mean, we've done this before in Florida, I mean, that, you know, rather than that being all asphalt, it could be some inlaid pavers that help make that look down than just on asphalt. There, you know, the amount
your
of trees,
stormwater
the amount of trees in the canopy, I noticed you have that there. Is it important? There are I mean, so there's
ways.
ideal and then, but I'm advocating for this orientation of the building. If it is a C shape, it would be my preference.
so if I go along with your riff about the park and the views of the park, I guess I would put my larger East Franklinton hat on and say that if the park isn't developed there, right? We learned that first prize you came in front of us, that you don't know what's happening with the park.
Yeah, the
right?
park, there's,
So it's not really a park yet.
if you bring up the aerial, you'll get a sense of.
But if
It's
it,
just like
if
a
it did,
one lane.
if it did become a park, though, to me, it would be nice if units were lining the park, like just think bigger scale, block by block. And I know we don't control all those blocks and there's single family housing and stuff, but the reason I'm saying if it flipped to the sea to facing to the west, right, that then it would start to establish an edge along potentially the future expansion of the park or whatever. And And also it would help hide the parking from that side too, which is what I'm thinking about. Like if you can't figure out something else to do with the parking,
Well, it could be a lower scale structure. And again, I don't know where your property line is in relation to that. It is kind of messy what's going on, the edge of the park there, but being visionary about it, yes, it would be nice to line that edge. And maybe the roof of that become, it's a way of encapsulating the parking, and the roof of that could become an amenity piece as well.
well, I was thinking, yeah, could you add, it's like it should be a donut, right? Ultimately, really, but with an amenity space.
The Lido Lounge, that's the pool.
I mean, I was, that last row of parking where you have the three big trees before the drive aisle. Like, I could see maybe screening that more so you're not looking into that. So it feels like it's more of an enclosed courtyard with just one entrance in.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that helps. I mean, not so it's seeing the front end of a car and another back end of a car.
Right, so if that whole strip was a landscape edge.
Yeah.
That was heavily, so you use a landscape
Yeah.
solution to hide the parking.
Yeah.
Again, all of these are considerations, right? You guys have to do the look through. I don't like the parking there at all. But if it's there, screening it or putting, or flipping the building so that you don't see it, I think there are other ways that you could address it.
All the scooters are on the short board. Scooter it open.
Because I do like that isn't, two head-in parking off the drive out. I think there's the opportunity, the way you have that orientated, to block the front end of those cars that are there and make it a little bit more soft edge to them.
Yeah, part of that whole thought process too, there's so much unknown with what the potential could be. We're trying to react to what's there today. And where that drive aisle shown is actually future right away for Sullivan, but the city's saying they don't want Sullivan in. So we're trying to,
But your project is a good opportunity to help shape that. Like,
Yeah.
You could
But
kind of
But-
move forward about it.
is the edge to the north of that drive aisle, is that the edge of the property? So
to
instead
the,
of just
to
having
the
a car,
very south is the property line, right there.
That's your,
That's the property line.
and so I
Then
guess
on the
I
other
was
side.
saying, on the other side of that drive aisle, if there was landscape
But yeah,
there, it still gives you the right of way, it's still there's a curb and then 3 feet of landscaping that creates, maybe those spots there, instead of being 18 feet deep are 16 feet compact spaces, and you find another foot somewhere else that allows you to get a nice landscape there, that even if that becomes a public road going forward, it's still a separation between that parking.
Like-
Not that-
currently on the other side of that line, to the south of that line, that's the single aisle parking that exists, right?
No, it actually, there's a little green buffer and then there's 2 rows of parking and then McDowell Street kind of ramps
Right,
up on the other side of that, almost up the flood wall.
yeah,
And as you kind of head west, some basketball courts come into play.
okay.
Kind of going back to 2019, I mean, when we had the higher rise, we were talking about land swaps and trying to get Sullivan reinstated, trying to get units lining that street. It's just, I think it's all great in planning, but we just can't get anyone. You made the cut, like, use this project, try
To
multiple
kind of
times.
try.
Yeah. But I think those are all great comments, and I think we can find a way in that courtyard to help. Yeah. To some additional green scaping in there, whether that's doing some like carport with green roofs and trying to address it that way, but let our design guys figure that out.
To Ryan's point, I think Realm could probably make that into the best parking court. possible.
I mean, Kim, I'm not disagreeing, the best would be, all that, I'm just trying to look at a way that makes sense for understanding the economics a little bit, but also, the orientation that I think someday, hopefully that courtyard, while they might be looking down a park, and they also have a better view of something long-term.
And I'm not, I mean, I'm saying there's some other options to look at.
Yeah.
And if you come back with something that's just absolutely fabulous and it's got parking in it, maybe that's still a consideration, so.
I have a question that's not bricks and mortar.
Mhm.
What percentage and in what formula for the affordable housing?
We are still working through that, so that's a factor in this whole as well.
What's the goal in a perfect world where somebody gives you a couple of $1 million?
Well, if somebody gave us a couple $1 million, that would, we'd probably try to introduce some component of 60% AMI and heavier 80%. I don't know we're gonna have that.
Fairy godmother?
Yes,
And then what percentage of the building would be the 60 and 80% AMI?
if we had the fairy godmother, we're probably looking at maybe 10 on the 60 and 20 to 30 on the 80.
Okay,
It's a math exercise at
yeah,
that point.
no, I get it.
Our partners, Columbus Metropolitan Housing Authority, so the whole, our partnership's still working through that, the conversations with the city, the building types that we're showing, this is all factoring into that conversation.
How many units total was this?
34?
234.
We exhausted our questions, comments, thoughts.
What about the walkway? There was a second-story walkway. So,
It's still there.
It's still there.
where is it?
It's in the middle.
The
By-
connector.
On the second, it's a different page.
Go to the second floor plan.
And it's just to connect the parking.
Right there, so in the middle, yeah, right there in the middle. Second level of the south building to the pool deck.
Okay. I don't have an issue with the breachway. I think that's like an industrial connector between warehouse buildings.
Wait till you see what Brian has.
So that is private space, right? That's got the gates or right, so I'm sure you guys are gonna make that into a great place for them.
All right, if there's nothing else, we thank you and hopefully that helps you out.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a quick question for anyone in the room. Anybody heading to Franklinton after this so I can hitch a ride?
I can take you.
You could? Great, thank you.
I actually, I know we added that public update or whatever. I need to excuse myself here.
Okay, so another business today, we have a public utility update. Do we?
So the Department of Public Utilities to inform the board about work that is about to begin for sewer and water line updates in the area. A map of such work will occur. Water and sewer infrastructure will be replaced and or renewed in the area, generally bounded by West Broad Street, Grove Street, Dodge Park, and Lucas Street. Construction is slated to begin in October of 2021 and an estimated completion date of April 2023. This will result in some temporary impacts to traffic in the area. Also note that portions of streets will be partially or fully resurfaced as a result of this work. If there are questions for DPU, we can forward those along and we can have those answered at next month's meeting, or we can put you in contact with them.
So I have a comment.
Go ahead.
That I'd like to give back. So we had this conversation with Public Works about 5 years ago. I don't know when it was a long time ago, about who's responsible for the streetscape in East Franklinton. And we were told at that time that there was going to be improvements because they were going to come in and redo all utilities. And at that time, they were going to redo the streetscape also. That was what I heard, and probably two gentlemen that were probably there at that time, commissioners. I'm hearing you say they're just going to they're going to fix the utilities, replace them, and then resurface the streets, but that's it. There's not going to be any streetscape.
Did not hear anything about streetscape work in particular. We can find out more about that. I mean, if you wanted to.
That's my question back then. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I had been under the impression for several years that this work was going to happen, and that was the opportunity for the city to come in and fix the streetscape where it needs to be fixed, because as my fellow commissioners know, that applicants are not required to improve the public right away. Right. And if they're going to come in and mess up the street, it's the time to think about that also. I know that's probably a message that may not go very far, but I'd like that message to.
What's an answer to that question?
Yeah, and I think they know they.
Fair enough. Yeah. I do remember it now. You made it, it's been a while, but yeah.
Well, I was the one that raised it and wanted to understand it, because as we review cases and we look at the public realm outside of along developments, and the developer says, well, I'm not responsible for that. That's the city. And the city's not doing anything about it, except they said they would do it if we did until it. So that's my question. Mark, here's a taller word for you.
Try to find out more. Any more facts?
Thanks.
All right, so, before we conclude, Dr. Box, is this your last meeting?
No, December.
December? Okay, well, hold my comments then.
Okay.
Okay, so our next business meeting, if needed, is Wednesday, October 13th at noon, in this room. And our next hearing date is Wednesday, October 27, 3 p.m. in this room. And with that, we stand adjourned. Pretty much.
If I'm going now, you don't have a quorum for the rest of the year.
There is that problem, yeah.
That's why I meant to pick December 31st. I figured that'd take time to replace.
We're not reporting anymore. So we now need 2 replacements.
Yeah.
I didn't realize we were.
And I did submit 2 names. I don't know what they're doing with them, but they're good candidates.
Still reporting.
Live streams.
Oh, sorry.